Yeah. I figure what she says.
All right. Good morning, everybody. We're going to start already because I have some housekeeping and we've got introductions and a whole bunch of stuff. So let me go over a few housekeeping things. I'm on the second page there of your handout. And I have tapped for today Alex Moore, who's in room 105 with everyone else, as my go-between. And so if y'all need anything over there, just come running or send Alex, because you know that's how this works. And for those of you who are joining online, if you got any questions, feel free to text me afterwards or text me now, and we'll do the best that we can. A few things of housekeeping for y'all to know. One is that every Sunday at 11:30, when we have this class, it is always in a hybrid format. It is always in person and via Zoom at the same time. So you are welcome to be here in person. I encourage you to be here in person as often as you can, because that accentuates our learning experience together. But because I do record it every week, it is being broadcast live on our YouTube channel for two purposes. One, because there are some folks who don't use Zoom, but they follow us on the YouTube. And two, there are some folks who just couldn't be here today or whatever class that we're in, and they can go back later in the week and watch this episode or watch the class. If that is you and you need to miss a Sunday, but you want to catch up, you can always watch any of our Christian education episodes on the YouTube. Each week, I will send you an email with a link that says click here, and it'll take you to our playlist on the YouTube channel, and you can catch up and watch that way. That being said, because we are being recorded, I do want to just remind you all that anything you say can and will be held against you. No. But, you know, some of you may not want to be seen on camera, and that's fine. Generally, those outside of the Gallagher splash zone back there will not be on camera. That's a good reference. I want to know whether y'all got that reference, because that was a good reference. All of y'all in the splash zone, the backs of your heads may be on the YouTube. For today, if in room 105, if you can, I don't think you can see yourself because I turned the self view off, but I can see everybody except to those who are sitting on the door side of Joe. And so anyway, I'm glad to see y'all, glad to have you. And the same thing for our people on Zoom, because this is being recorded. If you don't want to have your face, you can just keep your camera off, but we still want you to engage. Also, because we're doing with the Zoom hybrid, for those of you who have participated on Zoom in the past, it's been my experience that it has flowed very seamlessly, as if you are in the room. I have a TV monitor that I can see, and so if something pops up, I'm able to see you, we'll engage you. When we do kind of breakouts, you guys are going to break out together, and then we'll break out according to different places, and I'll go over that later. That being said, my eye might not always catch if something pops up in the chat. So if there is, just draw my attention to it and say, hey, there's a chat message, and I'll look at it and see what it says. Okay. Another thing, I am processing. I'm tickled pink, but I am processing. I've been teaching at this church 11 years, and this is the largest registration we've had for any adult Christian ed in the 11 years I've been here, which is a wonderful thing. And the reason why I'm still processing is why are there so many people who are volunteering or signing up for this? And I'm going to cover a little bit about our why we're offering it here in a little bit. But because, and we're close to 40 in registrations, but because there are so many folks, normally we're in this room and clearly we cannot all fit in here. I had thought about room 201, which is upstairs. And even with where we are, we would have been too much for the room above us, which is a bigger room. And so for today and today only, we're only in these overflow spaces. So we're in here in room 105. And sometime in the next 2 days, I will make a determination of where we will meet. The goal is for us all to be in one room together. So if you're going to be here in person, I want us to be together. And either that will be the multi-purpose room for the time being or the fellowship hall. And I'm leaning towards the fellowship hall because that allows a little bit more space and flexibility. And since we have so many speakers and guests coming, that's just a natural environment to have our guests. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here in a little while about our guests, but stay tuned. I will send you an email and let you know definitively where we are going to be meeting. Also, coffee. A lot of you have discovered that in this room, there's a Keurig machine. Sorry, room 105, that you don't have a Keurig, but you're welcome to come over here to the Keurig machine and make coffee. Since I think we'll be in the fellowship hall, we'll make sure that we have coffee available after worship as well. And so please know that we'll do our best to do that. And we will take turns on how we attend to coffee. Great. Now let's go on to our opening prayer. Those are my housekeeping notes in your handouts. Let's turn to our opening prayer. Let us pray. Gracious and compassionate God, we gather in your presence, inspired by the call to serve those most in need. May our hearts be open to the lessons of faith and action, and may we be equipped to bring home where despair reigns. Bless this gathering as we embark on this journey together, led by your spirit of love. Amen. Amen. Well, for those of you who've been with me in a class setting before, I try to approach, especially when we are engaging with topics that might be challenging or sensitive, I try to have us engage one another and to create a culture that is covenantal, that is striving to honor the sacred in everyone, and to know that we all come from different places. We all have different upbringings. We all have different opinions. And how is it that we can come together in this place and share these things with us in a way that is not destructive, but that is constructive for the body of Christ? So oftentimes I will use a class covenant, and I want us to go through that printed in your handout there. The class is guided by a covenant that strives to foster openness, respect, a sense of equality where every voice matters. Together, let's share, listen, and grow with curiosity and wonder, trusting in God's presence to guide us. And so for right now, what I'd like to do is, John Seaman, I'm going to pick on you. Do you have the handout there in front of you? Good. Let me introduce John Seaman is the chair of our Christian Education Committee, and Caitlin Hedrick is our other elder for Christian Education who's not here right now. But John, if you will read letter A in the 7 points of the class covenant.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great. A, be fully present and extend welcome. Commit to being present in the moment, setting aside distractions, and welcoming others into the space. Presume your own welcome and actively create an atmosphere of belonging.
Good. Thank you. Kitty, would you do B, and then Marie, would you be willing to do C?
Listen generously. Engage in deep, attentive listening, both to what is said and the emotions behind the words. Approach others' stories with the same reverence and openness as you would scripture.
Author your story and respect others. Share your own experiences authentically while honoring the stories of others. Recognize that each story is unique, valuable, and contributes to our shared understanding.
Lisa, would you be willing to do D and then Avrish E, Colton F, and John G? John Hoffner.
Okay. Approaches equals. Acknowledge that while everyone has different gifts and experiences, no one's perspective is more important than another's. Embrace the equality of the voices in the room.
Respect boundaries and invitations. Participation is voluntary, not mandatory. Everyone is invited to share, but should determine their own level of comfort and engagement without pressure.
F, suspend judgment and avoid fixing. Resist the urge to judge or solve others' problems. Focus on creating a safe and sacred space for exploration and growth, trusting God's presence in the process.
G, cultivate wonder and trust the process. Embrace curiosity and openness when faced with discomfort, unanswered questions, or tension. Trust that our time together can lead to growth, transformation, and the flourishing of God's work in the world.
So I hope that, and I want to encourage you, these will be printed in our handout each week, and I want to encourage you to read through them throughout the course of the week. There are 7 of them, 7 days of the week. They make for a good reminder, like a daily devotional or a meditative word. I think this is, I think these are descriptive of the spiritual culture of Hope Presbyterian Church, both the way it is now, as well as what we continue to strive for as we gather in worship, in Christian education, and in service to others. So let me encourage you and commend you to embrace those each day and each time that we gather. On page 3, let's do some introductions. And this is going to take a little bit of time. I recognize it. And Alex, we're going to start with room 105 first. So if you need to unmute. In your handout, you've got a prompt. And the prompt is based on that first point of the covenant, be fully present and extend welcome. And the prompt to you is this: if you could be fully present anywhere in the world right now, where would it be? But you can only do it with one word. You only got one word to answer that question. So if you need to write it down, you can go ahead and write it down, but say your name and where is the one word answer to that question. And Alex, I'm just going to depend on you to call around the folks.
Start right here.
Hi, I'm Laura Pearson, here.
Okay, good.
I'm Gloria Diaz-Calva, Garden.
I'm Carol Stimson, Austin. I'm Julie Scales, here.
Dave Pearson here.
I'm Henry Moore and Texas. I'm Lindsay Moore, Forest.
Say one back.
Carla Young, Saka.
You say Osaka?
Yes.
Okay. The restaurant?
The city.
We're trying to be present, Josh.
Okay, all right. All right.
Laurie Grayson, Beach.
Beach.
I am Chris Grayson, Beach as well.
Beach.
Joan Hetherington, right here. Marty Callahan, Australian Open.
Joe Schultz, New Orleans.
All right. Katie Marie John, and then we'll come into room.
Alex Moore, Beach.
All right. Thank you, Alex.
My name is Kitty and India.
Okay. Your wish is your command. All right, Marie.
Marie Baker, Lake.
John Seaman, room 104 with y'all.
Yes, we agree. We agree. Now, we're going to start in room 104. We're going to start with Elaine and we're going to go over. We're going to serpentine from Diana all the way over to Julie, up to Nancy, all the way over to Raven, Patty, all the way over to Diane, and then to me. Go for it. Elaine.
Elaine Adams Mountains.
Tom Adams, French Riviera.
Oh, wow.
Diana Petrick, Maidstone.
John Hoffner, the top of Machu Picchu.
Colton Hedrick, Bass Pro Shops.
Chris Chavez, present, Taylor present.
Lisa Shaw, Palisades.
Natalie Day, Mountaintop.
Betty Milburn, Beach.
Julie Pratt, Hawaii.
Nancy Patchen, New Zealand. Patty Moore, Beach. Randy Gozzo, Studio.
Patty Harrison here.
Ron Johnson, Rome.
David Cook, boat.
Missy Ngoma, Malawi.
Nancy Ryder, here. Diane Rogers, Australia.
Josh Robinson, Lego bench. All right, good. Thank you for everybody for doing that. I would encourage you to please let me know if you're not here in person. Just send me a quick email so that way I can keep a tally that you were with us, and that would be wonderful. So let's. Yes, Joan Cook. Hello, Joan. And I bet room 104 would be her answer as well. Let's talk a little bit about expectations. I want to talk about expectations that you should have of me and that I have of you. Expect that I am going to ask challenging questions, that I want to stir your brain, and I want to get us an opportunity to be thinking in ways that we might not normally think. Sometimes we think very horizontally, and I want to ask questions and challenge us to also think vertically as well. I will provide information. I'll make space for feedback. I'm committed to starting and ending on time. For those of you who have been in class with me before, I'm pretty much a stickler about the 11:30 start time as best as possible. Sometimes the preacher is just like really wordy, and today wasn't a problem though. And so I will strive very hard to start exactly at 11:30 and to be a good steward of our time together. I may need to cut our conversations short from time to time just to honor that time and to stay on schedule. So thank you for understanding that. My expectations from you is also to engage by asking thoughtful questions, to participate in the dialogue while staying focused on the topic at hand. It's easy, especially when we have more persons, for us to go off on a tangent. Or I had this one time when I was in Monte Picchu on a mountain and this thing happened and it reminded me. I love those stories. I really do. And let's go have coffee and talk about them. But I want to make sure that we're honoring all of our time together. And so approach our discussions with a spirit of thoughtfulness and constructiveness. Again, there is no one size fits all for a conversation about homelessness. We all have strong opinions, and they may be similar with other persons in the room, but we want to come and really help kind of think, how is God using us and where is God calling us? I want to encourage you to take notes, and so that to help you reflect on key points, and that you might apply what you've learned beyond our time together and during the course of the week. It's always my hope that there's something that we've covered in our Christian education time together that has been lingering with you as a filter all throughout the course of the week. I know that as I have been preparing to get here today, the last 8 days, as I'm driving through the city and seeing homeless camps, people on the corners, etc., I have been thinking a lot about, well, what are some of my preconceived notions? What are some of my prejudices? And also, what is the one way of thinking, that horizontal way of thinking about homelessness that prevents me from being able to explore this topic more faithfully. And that's, as you heard in my sermon today, I talked a little bit about place and feeling displaced. You can live in a home, but feel homeless. You can live in a home and feel displaced from the community that you're in. And so there is a multi-dimensional way in which we're going to look at homelessness, and also the many levels that chart us down to being on the streets and what that looks like on that progression path, that linear path of we're financially fine and secure today. The next step, maybe we're one emergency away, one financial crisis away, to we're couch surfing, to we're living in the car, to we're living in the courtyard between the West building and the A&E building, to more dire situations. So there's not a linear path, but the idea of being housed and having a place of community, a place where you feel welcome and safe and security, has many layers for us to examine. And so I want you to be thinking about that and letting that be a filter for you as you go through your week. It was what year is this? 25? Yeah, 5 years ago this month, we launched a new prerogative. It started a new mission endeavor. It started 6 years ago with some deep discernment of our outreach committee. What do we think God is calling us? Who do we think God is calling us as a church community to be and to do? How are we to live out the idea of who we are as a worshiping community? And so we spent about a year of 2019, the better part of a year of 2019, trying to discern and answer that. We did a survey to the congregation. You all gave us good feedback. And some of the things that we began to discern is there isn't a galvanizing mission initiative or vision that pulls our community together. If during 2019, if you had asked 10 people, what is the mission of Hope Presbyterian Church, you would have gotten 13 different answers. How then do we consolidate this vision? This is where we gave birth to the Matthew 25 initiative. And Matthew 25 has a multi-pronged approach to it. It is a stool, right, that has 3 legs. In Matthew 25, we read what is often known as the judgment of the nations. And it's Jesus saying that in the time to come, that there will be those who will be separated from the sheep from the goats. Okay? And for I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. Anybody else remember the other 3?
Sick and you healed me, in prison.
Not you, John. Not you, John. I darn near wrote the thing.
Naked and you clothed me in prison.
I was naked and you clothed me. I was imprisoned and you visited me. One more.
I was sick.
Yes, and you cared for me. I was sick and you cared for me. The sheep say, when was it that we did all these things? And Jesus says, just as you did it to the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me. And then to the goats, I was hungry, you didn't, and I was thirsty and you didn't. I was a stranger and you didn't. When was this? Just when you did not do these to the least of these who are members of my family, you did not do it to me. Okay, now these 6 compassionate acts of love that Jesus identifies, Jesus says these 6 compassionate acts are by what we will be judged. Almost the most clearest thing in the Gospels that we have with regard to what we are called to do, there are these 6 acts of compassion, 6 righteous acts that Jesus identifies. So when we look at the stool of the Matthew 25 program, which was presented to us by the PCUSA, the Presbyterian Church USA, our denomination, they offered a path into becoming a Matthew 25 church with 3 legs of that stool. 1, to build congregational vitality. 2, to eradicate systemic poverty. And 3, to dismantle structural racism. Now, to be a Matthew 25 church, you just needed to pick one of those 3-legged stool, and we could call ourselves a Matthew 25 church. We realized fairly soon that we could not be a vital congregation without also looking at these others. We couldn't look at poverty without looking at racism. We couldn't look at racism without being a vital congregation and engaging in the issues of poverty. So while we have embraced this 3-legged stool, the concept of the 6 righteous acts feeds into each one of those 3-legged stool. And so we then built a mission portfolio, and we began to look at the ministries that we give money to and that we participate in, and said, are they in alignment with Matthew 25? Is our G2G, our endowment grants, do they align with Matthew 25? Do they in some way help build congregational vitality, eradicate systemic poverty, or dismantle structural racism? Any one of those things. And are they in alignment with one of the 6 righteous acts? If they are not, then they may very well be great things that just may not be within our portfolio, within our mission calling. And the other part of that is how many members within our community are actively engaged in these areas and meaningfully committed to it. And so Hill Country Community Ministries is a great example of that. And we have a high volume and a strong relationship with Hill Country Community Ministries. One of the ministries that we don't is Manos to Christos, for example. We used to, but it's waned and it's not as much anymore. And while that's a great organization, it does great work, it is not within what the heart desires and the sweat equity of our community is with it as well. Okay. That being said, we launched this new mission initiative in January of 2020. And we had great gusto for about 2 months. But the remarkable thing was, even in the midst and the throes of COVID, this church galvanized and leaned into that mission initiative in a way that was mind-blowing. We did more mission in those mission and ministry in those first 4 months of COVID and sweat equity and giving and of time and products and coming together than we had in the previous year. It was remarkable. And I would say that most folks over the course of these last 5 years or 4 years have been able to come to you and say, I can name most of Matthew 25, the 6 righteous acts. Most of you can name them. Why? Because our community has chosen to live into it. That's a little bit of the background of Matthew 25. Well, as it ties into Christian education is, we've also wanted to make sure that our mission and service outreach is also aligned with our Christian education and formation. So while we do have a Bible study, a very traditional Bible study at 8:30 on Sunday mornings, at 10 o'clock on Wednesday mornings, and Ruth Circle and Men of Hope, we've also taken this hour, 11:30, to be an opportunity for us to engage and to explore issues that lead to a lack of congregational vitality, that lead to systemic poverty and structural racism. And what, there is a disassociation if we are to go do those good works, if we aren't understanding what is undergirding, why are those good works needed? An example that we talked about back then was, if we're standing by the stream and we see a baby floating down the river, many of us would reach in and grab the baby to rescue the baby. If we're standing by the stream and we're seeing lots of babies floating down the river, we will try to get as many as we can. And by doing so, we are doing the best that we can to help there, but we're also missing out and answering the question or investigating, why are there so many babies that are floating down the river? So let's take a step back and do both. Let's try to rescue as many as we can, and also let's also go upstream. What are some of these root causes that are contributing to racism? What are some of these root causes that are contributing to church exclusion of certain people? What are some of the root causes that are leading to systemic poverty? And let's explore them, because in answering some of those questions, we may have a better idea of how to prevent the baby floating down the river in the first place. Make sense? So that leads us to a brainchild of the Christian Education Committee, which was, let's offer a class focused on homelessness. And last spring, the Christian Education Committee wrote a grant to the GEG Endowment Committee and received this grant so that we may design a custom in-house class focusing on our community, our world where we live, where we are encountering folks who may live outside, and the hidden aspects of homelessness that we need to unveil, as well as to investigate what are some of these root causes that are contributing to what we see out in our community, as well as what we don't see. Does that make sense? John Seaman, do you want to add any more to that before I go on?
I did. You're right, Josh. I mean, this is actually the second class that Christian Ed is designed to raise awareness of one of those Matthew 25 elements. And the idea, the first one was a class we had last year on LGBTQIA plus folks and deconstructing the clobber passages and things like that. And the result of that class was the formation of a new ministry group here at Hope, and that will bring together all of the outreach and things like that out into the LGBTQIA plus community in order to invite all. Okay, the first part of our mission statement. This class will hopefully, you see in your handout there that the last part is a mission lab on April 13th. And in that class, what we hope to do is to bring all of our discernment and knowledge that we've gained over homelessness, what causes it, what are different ways of dealing with it, how does it affect us here in Hope's immediate community. And then in that last mission lab, establish a homelessness mission group here at Hope with the three leadership elements: the convener, the publicist, and the shepherd, and then members from the congregation that will then carry forward specific activities that the congregation has discerned and you all as part of this class. So that's really, and then the other part of the G2G grant, the first part was setting aside some honoraria money for a lot of the guest speakers to not necessarily pay them, but make a donation to their cause. But at the end, G2G also set aside a block of money that would help jumpstart a new mission group where we to discern to start one up.
Good. Thank you, John. And that's a good segue to going over the schedule, which I'm about to jump into. One of the other aspects of what John was mentioning is that we intend that as an output of our time together to construct a survey that we'll send out to the congregation, soliciting feedback that will also give us some guidance of where God might be calling us going forward. So with that, let me go over some of what John and I had in mind for this class. And gotta say, I'm stupid excited about this lineup and about what we're about to do. And I am just waiting with bated breath to see how God is going to reveal God's self to us in the midst of all of this. We felt like it is important that we know something more about homelessness than what we may just drive by or not see at all, correct? There are people in our community who are elected and are tasked or who have felt their own calling to engage with these issues in ways that may be incredibly foreign to us. I don't know that my calling is to city council. Well, no, I know my calling is not to the city council of Austin. But that doesn't mean it's not a good calling. It just means it's different from mine. And they're dealing with things on an organizational level that I don't have any expertise on, okay? So that being said, we wanted to look at the concept of homelessness through a variety of different lenses. And right out of the gate, we're going to have 2 Sundays of guest speakers. If you haven't met, for some of you, raise your hand, including you in 105, if you live in District 6 of City of Austin. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 11 in here. Marie, 12. So, a little around or a little more than half of us live in this district. This is the district where the church is located, District 6, the City of Austin. And our council person up until a week ago was a woman named Mackenzie Kelly. Now, as you get to know Mackenzie Kelly, her story, she has only ever lived in one district in her life. She was born in District 6. She's lived here her entire life. She knows this community well, and she has served faithfully in her role as a council person for this district. And she's just coming out of office. She didn't win in the election and is just now coming out of office. And I think that the perspective that we're going to get from Mackenzie and her approach on the concepts of homelessness and poverty within our district is going to be very fresh and very real. But also her ideological perspective is very different than what we're going to get the very next weekend. When we have council person Krista Lane, who just took office a week ago, and she'll be joined with Jimmy Flanagan, who was the council person before Mackenzie. Now, when we started doing a lot of our mission discernment back in 2018, 2019, Councilman Flanagan, Jimmy Flanagan was the council person, and we had a few meetings with him on campus. And he even attended one of our session meetings and gave us an hour-long update on his perspective of homelessness and the work that he's done. So I think that a lot of what some of his vision was back then, it's taken 6 years, but some of that is coming to fruition today, even though he's been out of office for quite a while. And we're going to talk more about that later on in the schedule. So, but again, ideological differences. Both of these 2 Sundays are from council persons in that civic-minded perspective of how to address the ideas and concepts of homelessness in District 6. All right, any questions about those 2 Sundays, those special guests? Saying none, I'll move on. Then, let's see, I don't see any hands up. Great. Then on February 2nd, we are going to have the sheriff of Travis County Sheriff's Office, Sally Hernandez, who was just reelected and sworn in recently. We have been working with Sheriff Hernandez for 5, 6 years, maybe 6 years, through our mental health initiatives. She is a strong advocate for mental health awareness, mental health intervention. She's a strong advocate for caring for women who become incarcerated, and is also a strong leader within our county. Now, where Hope Presbyterian Church sits, we are technically Travis County. However, it sometimes just depends on what side of the campus that you're on if you call 911 where you might get routed, because we're also on the county line between Travis and Williamson. But technically we're all Travis County. Anderson Mill Road is technically the county line of Travis and Williamson, although I think it bobs and weaves and there's a part that might come through here. That being said, I think on the county-wide perspective that she'll be able to bring us some perspectives, especially from that law enforcement filter, different from the council person, of how we might, what we might not see versus what we may see. Okay. And then we are also in District 47 for the Texas House of Representatives, and Vicki Goodwin is our elected official for where we are currently sitting. A lot of times when we have done the drive-through flu clinic out in the Circle Drive, I'm trying to look around if any of y'all have volunteered for the flu clinic. Natalie has. We started doing that about a year before COVID. And a number of times, Vicki has come to volunteer at the drive-through flu clinic without putting her name tag on, just as a volunteer. And I think she is a remarkable leader for our community. And I think this also brings us perspective on not just city or county, but also on a larger state level, and what she may be striving for with regard to our local district. On the 16th of February, we will not have class, but we are offering the mission fair. We started that back in 2020, and we've done it every year since. And the mission fair is all of the external partners that we partner with, nonprofits that we partner with. We are inviting to come set a booth up in our gymnasium, and we want you to come and to engage them, to visit with them, to get to know them and what they're striving to do, as well as our own internal mission initiatives, such as the Prayer Shawl, the Peacemakers, one of our new ones, which is the Kingdom Community Mission Group, another new one, which is our Knockers Initiative. That'll be a fun booth. We want you to attend the mission fair. Wait, is that what you're doing, Maria? Are you making knockers right now? Those are some small knockers at the moment. It feels weird, especially in front of mama. Ooh. Okay, moving on. Now on the 23rd, and I love doing this. I've done this for many years, and we kind of take a break and we got to enter the laboratory. We're taking in so much information. We need an intentional time to pause, to break, and to process it, to put what we've taken in into practice. And so we're going to go into the mission lab on the 23rd of February. And that'll be a constructive time. My hope is, as you are taking good notes during these initial visitors, that we begin processing and exploring, are there themes that we've heard? Are there areas that have been elevated that we would not have thought of before? And what's missing? What haven't we heard? On the 3rd of March, we will have our church's annual meeting that follows worship, so we will not have class on that day. I want to encourage you to go to the annual meeting. Then we're going to pivot from our civic leaders to our nonprofit leaders, and have in room 105 and then in here and online, have any of you ever taken a tour of the Community First Village? Okay. the founder of Community First Village. His name is Alan Graham. And again, when John and I were leading with outreach on discernment back in 2019, we went out and we interviewed Alan Graham, not only to hear his story, but also if he were to redo all of his work again, what would he do differently? And what he shared to us that day was transformative. And I look forward to you hearing what he has to say now, even 5 years since we interviewed him. He is a very well-known humanitarian within our Austin area. The process of him building Community First Village is one that was time and time and time again met with NIMBY. Y'all know what NIMBY is? Not in my backyard. We want you to do the good work. We just don't want you to do it here. And we're going to talk about, he's going to give us an opportunity to talk about some of the challenges that he faced of answering this call to God, while at the same time, the neighbors and the elected officials were saying, that's great, just don't do it here. And what that might look like for us. And so I'm very excited. Then the next week, God willing, and the creek don't rise, we will take a field trip together. Now, we have a church bus, and I'll pile as many as I can in the church bus, which is not all of us. We'll caravan out to the Community First Village, and we'll get to go see it firsthand. His vision of what this was, for those of you who have never heard of it or who have not been there, is to build a living community, a neighborhood that is populated with tiny homes, right? A tiny home is one that is maybe half the size of this room 104 or half the size of room 105 where you are. That is a kitchen, living room, maybe sometimes they have a bathroom, maybe they don't, or a kitchenette, and a living quarter, but it's just a tiny home, right? Maybe 250, 300 square feet. And this is a neighborhood full of those for people who are coming out of homelessness. And you'll see by the way in which it is designed that everything is intended to be community driven. So there are not kitchens. You may have a kitchenette with a microwave in your tiny home, but you do all of your cooking in a shared area together. We eat together. We share life together. And it is a great restorative, rehabilitative way for us to come out of homelessness. And many people may choose to just live there and to participate in the community. There are folks who are not homeless, who are very well financially, who choose to live at Community First Village, to be mentors and to be partners and neighbors with those as they are coming out of homelessness. It is a brilliant, brilliant ministry that unfortunately is so far outside of our area because they couldn't get it inside the city. So it's just outside the borders of the city of Austin. But for us, it is also very far away. It's very much East Austin. So it'll be a hike. We'll do a field trip out that day. On the 23rd, raise your hand if you have ever been and toured Hill Country Community Ministries up in Leander. Okay. Yeah, not as many of you have done that. And that is one of our strongest mission partners. We need to go see it. We need to see what those volunteer opportunities are, but we need to hear from Thaisa Holloway, the executive director, who has been there almost a decade. And you need to hear from her, what has she seen with regard to food insecurity and homelessness over the course of 10 years? And I promise you, you will find out that she will say it is more than quadrupled over 10 years. The demands of what they are feeding in the course of a week is skyrocketed. And you will be surprised at how many they feed and the good that they do in a building that may be the size of well, no, it's not the size of the Fellowship Hall. That's smaller than the Fellowship Hall building. Maybe the West building which is where the choir room is. It's pretty remarkable what they do, and they are hoping to grow into a new space in this calendar year. Yes, sir.
And don't forget that Hope was a founding member 43 years ago.
Say that again.
Hope was a founding member.
Hope was a founding member of Hook Country Community Ministries 43 years ago. So this has not been something that has been popped up. The need has been there for a long time. And then we have our final special guest is Terry Cole, who's the founder of Street Youth Ministry. Now, this ministry is inside of what I call the Austin Beltway, okay? And it is focused on youth who are experiencing homelessness. And the work that he and Street Youth Ministry do is phenomenal. And Pastor John has encountered with them when in his previous church. But it leads me to ask, I don't know anything about youth who are experiencing homelessness in our area. That is absolutely something that I'm blind to. And what that would look like mostly for us is couch surfing, right? And people who are just staying at a friend's house for a little bit, and another friend's house for a little bit, couch surfing, or in places where they are terribly vulnerable and lack security when they need to rest at night, and what that might lead to. And our final field trip that we will do is to the Peace Lutheran Church, which is on 620. So if you go down Anderson Mill, turn left at 620, there's where the HEB is. Right next to St. Thomas More is Peace Lutheran Church. And when we started visiting with Jimmy Flanagan back in 2019, the Pastor Carolyn over at Peace Lutheran was joining us. And we were doing a lot of discernment together about how to answer the issue of homelessness within our district. And we took a different turn. And what they did is they have set aside and worked very hard on establishing a residence on their property for persons to come out of homelessness. And the Peace Family Housing Project was something that we were looking at back then. And they have been able to realize over the course of a lot of hard work, fundraising, and many years. So we will take a field trip over there and tour those grounds and listen to their plans of what they're able to do. One of the things that they're able to do different from us is we are located in a neighborhood, and they are not located in a neighborhood. They have a little bit more flexibility of what they can do than we felt comfortable doing at that time. So that is the overview of what this class is going to navigate through over the next couple of months. And now I want to ask you and Adam's family, y'all are going to need to come up here to one of these front tables. At your tables, if you look at bullet point number 7, activity number 1, I want you to, and the same thing over there in room 105, I need y'all to gather up in no more than 6. So you're gonna have to move, Graysons. I see you through the walls, X-ray vision. Moores, Graysons, maybe y'all get together. I want y'all to work on activity number 1, item bullet point number 7. Share your initial thoughts, concerns, motivations for taking this course. And your instructions are to go through some of these questions. What first comes to mind when you hear the word homelessness? What concerns or fears do you have about homelessness in your community? And then, but I certainly want y'all to share, why are you personally interested in this course? Why is it that this is the largest number of persons who's registered and willing to come to an 11:30 following worship on Sundays? Why is this so important? So we won't take 20 minutes. Let's take 10 minutes. Okay, go to it. Let's do it. And for you on the Zoom, Kathy, Kitty, John, and Joan, and 007253. Same thing, but y'all do it amongst yourselves. We'll have it off on mute in here, okay? But you are still being recorded.
Awesome.
Well, the reason that I signed up to be here today was because.
Hey, Josh,
So.
Yeah. Oops.
I think he's gonna like
Allow
turn it.
camping to take place. It was amazing how many people came out of the woods.
I like that.
So let me see if I can mute.
I see the homelessness around on the news. There's some story. It's obvious that there needs to be.
You text him?
And I think as far as I'm concerned, I have to be here. There's a lot of work to do.
County has now.
Oh,
Myself being up to it, certainly
give him a call.
easier.
Yeah.
She was under the underpass, they had to. But it was obviously during the day, it was.
My brother lives in Austin.
Maybe.
Went up here, lived out here, college, but in our old neighborhood, because I grew up, and he has several rooms. He has remember sitting on.
Just down out here.
All kinds of.
All those.
And shoot it. They steal it.
There's some artists.
Got him on text.
Okay, hold on. Oh, I'm looking at the phone. There he goes.
Yep.
Yay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. So, anybody want to go first? What comes to mind?
I'm Nancy.
I always think of
I woke
it's
up all
hard.
creepy this morning, so I'm here. But Nancy Boots, just so y'all know who I am.
Okay, thank you, Nancy.
Uh-huh.
Kitty?
When I see them on the street corner and under the overpass and stuff, you know, sometimes their clothing, their tents, their bicycles, all seem like it cost a lot of money, you know. It always makes me wonder how they got all that stuff. And are they making a business out of them? And I know that's jaded from my perspective, but I don't know how many are really, really homeless.
Yeah. I think I've seen that same thing and have those same thoughts, but I'll wait a minute to go. Joan?
Yes, when I see them, it reminds me of my son. So I know that a lot of the stuff they got is stuff that's been discarded, they found in the trash.
Yep.
They're not brand new tents. Some of them don't even fold up all the way. So that part doesn't bother me. I know what bothers me is that they're there in the first place and not in a selfish way. The fact that whatever they have gone through has put them in this situation. Now, some may be alcoholics, some may be addicts. They need the mental help to be able to work themselves out of that situation. It's very difficult to figure out how to get that done. My son has, for many years, been very close to homelessness. Yes, he's a couch jumper. And then sometimes there is a person that, usually a female, that lets him stay with them. So, but he's always taking care of that. He's never had to actually live on the street. And it's because I have provided a vehicle and a telephone so that I can keep up with where he is and how he's getting along. So when I see these people on the street, my heart of compassion is full. And I want to be able to help them, and I don't know how. Other than the guy in the wheelchair with the dog at the corner, I'll pass off a $20 bill. Tell him, go feed your dog and get a meal yourself. That's what motivates me to come to this class, to hopefully be able to figure out some way that I can help other than that.
Yeah. No, that's thank you, Joan. And you absolutely got into part two, or the further part about why are you personally interested. So
Yes.
thanks. Marie?
I'm just always, there's two things. One is there's the visible homelessness. So the shopping carts under the overpass, the people standing at the corner with the cardboard signs, some of which I think are probably part of groups that do this because the signs look an awful lot alike, and that's sad in itself that that's happening. But there's the other, what I really want to learn more about in this class is the invisible homelessness and the couch surfers, the
Yes.
people who are staying in their cars that we don't notice.
Yes.
You know, and what can we do to prevent, because many of those people end up becoming visibly homeless. Like Joan, you're very lucky that your son has not, but many do.
Yes.
And so are there things that we can do upstream to prevent people from going into invisible homelessness, or get them out of invisible homelessness sooner so that they don't end up in visible homelessness?
Yeah. No, that's great. Nancy, did you want to share? No, okay.
Sorry, no, I'm just really congested this morning, so
Okay.
I'm gonna save my voice.
Okay, thank you. So for me, I think two things. Both of them rooted sort of in who I am. My first thought is, how did they end up there? If you drive and you see them in the underpass or wherever, and how did they end up there, and how many steps away myself am I from being there in that
Exactly.
same situation? Did they have a job, lose their job, get evicted from their place, have a falling out with their family? And Josh talked about Alan Graham and Community First, and when he and I went down there, and it really was transformational because it shifted my whole way of thinking about homelessness. And you'll hear Alan Graham say it himself, the problem with folks in those situations is not a loss of shelter or a loss of a home. It's a loss of community. And, and you'll hear how, he redefines that and approaches it rather than, just getting people in a shelter. I mean, that's a big part of it. You want to get people into a shelter, but the way you do it is what's unique about Community First. And, so he'll talk about that. And based on that, the second thing I think about when I see folks like that is how our own system, whether it is a governmental approach, a private organization and church approach, a community approach to dealing with homelessness, how ineffective and inefficient it is. Now, there are definitely organizations out there that are doing great things. The Hill Country Community Ministry, one of them for sure, dealing with just the problem here in their own region. But and so over the last couple of years, I've sort of put my consulting skills to work, and have tried to develop an organizing principle in my own mind about homelessness, and that's, I think, part of what we'll do at the Mission Lab in February 23rd. Is I look at it as sort of a bow tie type of situation, right? And so you have a bow tie that starts wide and gets narrowed down to the knot, and then from the knot it gets wider and goes out from there. And I look at it like on the left-hand side of that bow tie, everything on the far left, everything's fine. somebody's employed, they have insurance, they have shelter, they have a vehicle, they're okay. They may be on the margins, right, but they're okay. But then something happens. They get fired, they get sick, their vehicle breaks, and causes financial situation or whatever. And so then they start moving from left to right towards that knot in the bow tie. And it's sort of a slippery slope. And so Joan, I mean, what you talk about with your son, you make sure he has a car and a phone. And that is dealing with, keeping him from moving, and he can couch surf or stay with friends or something.
All right.
Right.
Yes,
All right. All right. Hello. Okay, good. I hope that was helpful. Let me ask you, as I want you to keep that, whatever it is that you were sharing and what has been shared around your tables. I think my guess is many of you may express the sentiment of, man, it's such a huge issue. And like the expression, how do you eat an elephant? Right? One bite at a time. And you gotta pick the right bite first. I have family who would prefer I don't eat an elephant at all. Right. That being said, I want to encourage us to live in that unsettledness for a while. Just as much as we may feel like, wow, that's such a big thing. There's so many questions, and I just feel so unsure of, that space of living in there is what breeds apathy. If we aren't careful. And I want us to be living in that space, but to be careful. We believe in the God of resurrection, and we believe in the God of redemption. We believe in a God of restoration. And as we believe in this God, we know that something's possible. Our job as Christians is to simply ask, God, what are you calling me to do? And then to answer, here I am, Lord. Right?
Right.
So that being said, let me encourage you to live in that sacred space of being overwhelmed, and know that our God overwhelms that issue. Our God is much larger than the issue of homelessness. And if that's the case, and if that's a truth that we believe in, then we know something's possible. Amen.
Amen.
Now, as we prepare to engage with speakers and visit sites, let me probe you and ask, what discerning questions, this is on your handout, what discerning questions should guide us in understanding homelessness and imagining hope's response? What are some things that we should keep as things that we need to be on the lookout for, or should spark curiosity? What are some discerning questions that leads us in curiosity and sacred wondering?
What are the current things that have been tried?
All right, that is not a good marker. What's been tried? Great.
What are the causes?
Okay. Causes. Good. What else? And room 105, you're going to have to unmute because we want to hear from y'all as well. And same thing for you on Zoom.
One question I have is, if you make things too good, will you be overwhelmed from homeless in other areas of the country? How do you balance?
They're doing this in Austin, so let's go to Austin.
Yeah, absolutely. Word gets out. So
Because it's a super
what's the right answer? It's a real conundrum. Because you don't want to say, oh, because of that, I'll do nothing. You don't want to say that. So what's the right answer?
It expands. It
I-
expands.
I'm sorry, the idea of making it too good, a program that's too good,
Or
that, and the reason why it stops me
it's
is,
because it's tough.
that's exactly what we're called to do.
Yeah.
We're to make it so good, and my response is, if it's pulling people from San Francisco, so what?
Yeah.
You know, there's plenty
That's
Christians in Austin, plenty of people who profess to be Christians in Austin. You know, we do what we can do, right? I'm going to try and figure out a better way to ask what that is. I get what you're saying, right? I get what you're saying. Yeah, Lisa.
On this point, I get what you're saying, that so what if it brings in more homeless, and yet exactly like that gentleman saying, I'm sorry, I forgot your first name. Could be a hurdle for people getting involved because they want to do what they can, but they don't want that. So we still want people to do what they can, and this hurdle, it shouldn't be just like, so what? It's a hurdle.
Yeah.
It's a mental.
Overloading resources.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't help.
What's that,
Right.
John?
What's the cost?
Oh, the financial cost, yeah. So overloading resources, an example of that we see all along the southern border of Texas and Mexico, right? Overloading of resources. It's just too much, right? What other things might we want to have as discernment to help guide us in our understanding of homelessness and imagining hope's response? What are the things that we want to have guide us?
What are the greatest needs?
Okay. And that's interesting because I think you can ask that to each of the speakers, right? Whether it's a council person, whether it's the sheriff, whether it's the state rep, whether it's the street youth ministry, whether it's a community first village, that's a question, right? What do you see as the greatest needs? And I'm curious about what kind of answers those would be. Yeah, John?
So I think linked to where's the greatest need is, where are the organizations, and thus maybe where should Hope engage with the homelessness on the spectrum of homelessness?
Yeah, and I'm holding off on talking about the spectrum when Timmy gets there. What agencies, say that again, John, what agencies are engaged?
Yeah, at what point along the spectrum with folks, you know, are they like dealing with people that are living under the bridge, or are they dealing with people that are, you know, lost their job and are slipping into, you know, loss of community and homeless?
Okay, good. Got it.
How are our neighborhood churches participating?
Oh, yeah. How are churches participating? Good. All right.
I have a question here too, because I almost ended up in that homeless situation, but it was due to mental health. And
Yes.
my question there is, I haven't heard anything really addressing that.
Mental health and homelessness. Good.
Yes.
Well, and drug addiction and homelessness.
Yes.
And I'll put and drug addiction.
And alcohol.
Addiction. Good. What else? Let's get a couple of more and then we'll wrap up.
If people don't go to church, how can we take church to these people?
Okay. How take church to the homeless? Okay, good. One more. Okay, well, John and Colton.
Based on what we find out, are there new initiatives, you know, that we can start, maybe not just tacking on to somebody else's, but a new one? And that helps solve what you talked about. I love your illustration of how can we help upstream to help solve the causes of it rather than the results of it necessarily.
Maybe I'll put it down, also advocacy. Good. Colton, you get the last one.
Yeah, how will this help us see Christ in those people. Because it's more than just solving a problem. It's got to be connected to our theology. And that came out of Jesus's mouth. What you do to the least of these, you do to me. So it's got to come from there.
Good. Room 105. I know, did y'all have anything y'all wanted to add? I have a hard time seeing y'all, but did y'all have anything y'all wanted to add? Is that a thumbs down? Okay, I'm gonna say that's a no. And I think this might be out of frame. My markers aren't so great, and I apologize. Everything's gonna be better next week, I promise. I want to leave you with what dag nabbit.
Try the black one.
I've tried the black one. It's not any better.
No.
I gotta put it in the Christian education budget. Okay. I want to leave you with the concept that I came up with when I was working on my doctorate called Robinson's hierarchy of spiritual needs. You've heard of Maslow's hierarchy of spiritual needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? The bottom one is food, water, shelter, and security. And as you move upwards, it pinnacles at self-actualization, right? I've always loved the idea of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Robinson's hierarchy of spiritual needs has a similar flow. And it starts with, it's 3 levels. And that first level is what I call rapid response. These are the, we want you to go out and to bring these food items in a yellow bag on the 1st of every month, right? What is that? It is 0 engagement, low commitment, or almost, low commitment, and it's a rapid response. You're just bringing items, right? The Red Cross for the fires in California, here's a QR code, give us some money. That's a rapid response. You're not engaged with the folks. There's no commitment other than what you are giving, correct? Rapid response, but it is needed. And some of us, that's the best that we can do. I think one other type of rapid response could be what Marie's doing is, there's a need for these knockers and she's knitting them. There's no real engagement with persons who are going to receive them, but just knitting them. Now, that gets to what I call the second level of my hierarchy, which is accompaniment ministries. And that is also where the knockers could come in as well. When you go to a performance, there an opera, a soloist, Raven, right? And you go to hear Raven sing and perform, and she's not singing a cappella, but singing to a pianist. The pianist is the accompanist. The spotlight is on the vocalist, but there's someone there in the background in the dark who is accompanying so that they can perform excellently. And we have accompanist ministries. Stephen ministry is what I call an accompanist ministry. English as a second language is an accompanist ministry. It is, we're going to travel alongside with you and do what we can do for the betterment of you. You are the focus of love that we're going to pour out, and we're going to travel with you in this accompaniment ministry. Make sense? Mm-hmm. And in that top of that pyramid is what I call transformational ministries. And transformational ministries is going upstream. And what is the work we can do upstream that is transforming the world that we live in, transforming the issues that we are encountering? And these questions that we've named hit a large variety of each of those. How do we go to where they are and meet them where they are? Accompaniment. What are the needs? Do we need clothes? Do we need snipple kits? Do we need homeless bags for our cars? Rapid response. What are initiatives that we can take to go and work on advocacy upstream, the issues of systemic poverty or structural racism? Does that make sense? So these questions cover that variety of those different levels of that's what I call spiritual hierarchy of needs, of ministries and to respond. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? I think there is a balance of all of that here at Hope Presbyterian Church, and the things that we do, although some we're a little stronger in than others. Let me get to Elaine, and then we're gonna move to
I
closing.
just have a little question.
Please.
It's from my heart, but like, I like the rapid response because it's easy, but I
Mm.
like to be at the income level.
Yeah,
And I have to overcome fears, I have to overcome lots of different. reasons.
absolutely.
Can this class help me get there, or is there some other way to get there?
Well, that is the question I'd let hang out there. And by the time we get to the mission lab, the first one, maybe you'll have some answers. What Elaine had asked is, she really likes doing that rapid response because it's easy and it's low commitment. And we all can feel that, right? Right? It requires a little bit more buy-in and investment to do that accompaniment. Why? Because it's outside of our comfort zone. And we may have to hear things that we don't want to hear and meet people and maybe even have some of our core ideologies challenged. And we may come away believing something different than what we do today. There is discomfort in that. And also, I want you to think also about the discomfort of Christ as he was making his journey in ministry and public ministry as well, engaging with the people that society had said, no more, okay? And he leads the way into discomfort for us as well. And what is it that drives him is his compassion. So let us think about that for ourselves and what that sacred discomfort looks like. I'm not talking about it's necessarily physical, placing ourselves in physical danger, but I think it's possible that some of our spiritual zones of comfort might get challenged. Okay, it's probably what triggers us when we see people on the side of the road is a triggering of our spiritual discomfort because our compassion is so large and yet we're also so scared. Okay, and that requires more engagement, and then at that transformational level, there's a whole different type of commitment and engagement, and that might not be everyone's calling. That's why that part of the triangle is smaller. Okay, good. John Seaman, on your handout there is a closing prayer. Would you please lead us in that closing prayer?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Please join me in the closing prayer found at the bottom of page 3, item 10. Loving God, as we close this time together, let the lessons we've learned take root in our hearts. Equip us to carry forward your hope into the world, showing compassion and offering love to those in need. Bless us as we leave and grant us the courage to serve in your name. Amen.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you all next week. We'll all be together. I promise, we'll all be together.
Thank you.
Bye,